In this lesson, we will explore the big ideas that are involved in the use of ICT for learning. When considering the use of ICT for learning, we need to ask, are students passive consumers of ICT, active users, or designers of an ICT product for an authentic audience? Students' use of ICT happens when students use ICT directly to complete all or part of the learning activity. The educator's use of ICT to present materials to students does not count as student use. It is important that students have control over the ICT use themselves. Some educators' use of ICT can enhance their teaching significantly. For example, educators can show simulations that make difficult content easier for students to visualize. However, this rubric focuses only on how the learning activity requires students to use ICT in their learning. This rubric looks at the opportunities students have to use ICT. It is considered ICT use if the students are required to use ICT or can use ICT to complete an activity. Think about these situations and consider if the learning activities provide opportunities for students to use ICT. Students complete a math learning activity by using Excel spreadsheet software. Does this learning activity involve student use of ICT? Students complete a math learning activity by using worksheets that the educator has printed out. Does this learning activity involve student use of ICT? Students learn about cell replication by using a software simulation to explore the process. Does this learning activity involve student use of ICT? Students learn about cell replication by watching the educator demonstrate a software simulation of the process. Does this learning activity involve student use of ICT? Students use Microsoft OneNote to edit their writing, tracking their changes as they go. Does this learning activity involve student use of ICT? The educator uses Microsoft OneNote to make and track suggested changes to a student's writing. The next big idea centres around the question if the student use of ICT supports knowledge construction. Knowledge construction occurs when students generate ideas and understandings that are new to them through interpretation, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation. This rubric examines whether the learning activity requires that students use ICT in ways that support knowledge construction either directly or indirectly. ICT supports knowledge construction when students use ICT directly for the knowledge construction part of a learning activity. For example, students use a computer to analyze scientific information. Students use ICT to indirectly support knowledge construction by using ICT to complete one step of an activity, and then using information from that step in the knowledge construction part of the activity. For example, students might search for terms related to current events on Twitter and then analyze people's responses offline. The information they found on Twitter supported their analysis, so we say that ICT use supported knowledge construction. The knowledge construction supported by ICT must be about the learning goals of the activity. Learning to use the ICT does not qualify. For example, students might learn about PowerPoint as they create a presentation for history class. But to be considered knowledge construction using ICT, it is essential that the use of PowerPoint help them to deepen their interpretation, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation of historical ideas, not just to deepen their knowledge on how to use the tool. Evaluation of internet resources related to the learning goals is also considered knowledge construction. Some learning activities are designed to help students become intelligent, ethical users of internet resources rather than passive consumers of the information. For example, students might be required to find several sources on a topic and evaluate their credibility before they select which information to rely on. Think about these situations and consider if the student use of ICT supports knowledge construction. Students use Excel spreadsheet software to analyse results of an experiment. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students use Excel spreadsheet software to add numbers together. If students use a computer-based simulation to investigate how stars are formed, does this use of ICT support knowledge construction? If students watch a video about how stars are formed, does this use of ICT support knowledge construction? Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students use Sticky Sorter to create interconnected plot and character diagrams for the novel they are reading in literature class. If students use Sticky Sorter to make a list of the characters in the novel they are reading in literature class, does this use of ICT support knowledge construction? Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students use Kinect, Xbox, driving games to research and publish the effects of texting while driving. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students play with Kinect, Xbox, driving games. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students write an essay on a computer using Microsoft OneNote to help organise and synthesise their ideas in writing. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students use Microsoft OneNote to type an essay they have written. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students use AutoCollage to create a composite image that reflects the style and influences of an artist of their choice. If students use AutoCollage to create a composite image of artworks by an artist of their choice, are they using ICT to support knowledge construction? Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students who have not learned about triangles experiment with Microsoft Mathematics Graphing Calculator tool by entering angle degrees and hypothesizing about the total number of degrees in a triangle. Does this student use of ICT support knowledge construction? Students who have already learned about triangles use the Microsoft Mathematics Graphing Calculator tool to create triangles by entering angle numbers that add up to 180 degrees. We have examined if ICT is used by the students to support knowledge construction. The next big idea asks if the use of ICT is required for knowledge construction. In other words, are students able to undertake knowledge construction activities which would be impossible or impractical to complete without the use of ICT? For example, students might be asked to communicate with students in another country over a period of 2 weeks to research the impact of a recent drought on their community. In this case, email enables students to construct knowledge that they could not construct without ICT because mailing physical letters would be impractical in this short a time. The use of email is required for constructing this knowledge. Many activities that require knowledge construction can also be done without ICT. For example, students may be asked to find information about the beaks of a variety of bird species with different diets and develop categories of different types of beaks. If students use the internet for this activity, they are constructing knowledge, but ICT is not required. They would be able to achieve the same learning goals without ICT by using printed books in a library. Consider the following learning activities. Is ICT required for knowledge construction? Students use the internet to find newspaper articles about a current event from 3 different countries and analyse how the perspectives are similar or different. Is ICT required for knowledge construction? Students read the local newspaper online to research a current event and analyse 3 stories they find. Is ICT required for knowledge construction? Students use a computer-based simulation to investigate how stars are formed. Is ICT required for knowledge construction? Students use a spreadsheet to compute totals that they will use to analyse their data. The final big idea focuses on students as designers of ICT products. Students are designers of ICT products when they create ICT products that others can use. For example, if students record a podcast and make it available on the internet, they are creating an ICT product others could use. The product lasts beyond the learning activity and can be used or enjoyed by an outside audience. When students act as designers, ICT is supporting their real-world problem-solving and innovation. Students must have an authentic audience in mind, such as a community that needs the information their podcast will provide, or younger students who will learn about disease prevention from the simulation students are building. In their design, students must attend to the needs and preferences of that audience. Ideally, but not necessarily, the product might actually be used by the intended audience. Students who create a product with no particular audience in mind do not qualify as designers under this definition. Think about these situations and consider if the students are designers of an ICT product. In computer programming class, students use Touch Develop to design and program a mobile smartphone app that could help senior citizens in their daily lives. Are students designers of an ICT product if in computer programming class, students use Touch Develop to program a mobile smartphone app that causes the phone to vibrate anytime the user takes a photo? Are students designers of an ICT product if they use Songsmith to create songs to educate visitors to the Children's Natural History Museum about dinosaurs? Are students designers of an ICT product if they use Songsmith to create songs about dinosaurs that they will post on the internet for general access? Are students designers of an ICT product if they create videos of their own interviews with local community members that will air on a local television channel program about our community? Are students designers of an ICT product if students create videos of their own interviews with local community members to submit to the educator for the end-of-year assignment? Are students designers of an ICT product if they use the internet to research and communicate with local food producers, and then develop an app to help families in their community make more local choices when they buy their food? Are students designers of an ICT product if they use the internet to research local food producers and write a report of their findings to submit to the educator? In the next lesson, we will examine the use of ICT for learning, rubric decision tree.